All right, well, we got another day in the markets, and what in the world happened? Well, I'll tell you what, the place where I said we could potentially bounce, watch out day traders, when I did this morning's video, I'll tell you what, like it was a pretty incredible move in the early hours of the market. Wait until I show that to you. I'll give an update on what we see in the charts for SPY, QQQ, IWM. I'm also going to recap on Bitcoin, talk about what we see shaping up for Bitcoin, and also I'll give an update on XRP. And holy cow, if you didn't look at the 10-year and the 20-year bond yields, seeing that significant drop that we had in things like TLT and TMF, I'll show those to you, and I'll tell you what, they made a considerable move. So if you guys want to see my analysis, see what I'm buying and selling, my trades, also the other panel experts over there doing the same thing that I am, you can become a member of the Discord with thousands of members already over there, taking advantage of the products and services that we have to offer at the Discord. I'll tell you guys more about that later in the video. For right now, let's get into the charts on this. So we'll kick things off with QQQ. And I said, and this goes back weeks or even months to what I said about tariff and inflation fears. Actually, I had inflation or recession that I included tariffs in here, which I was including with inflation, but now it's worth having it out there separately as its own category. So there you go, you got it in its very own category, and I think it's very deserving to have it there. We came down to the 23.6, and that's a Fibonacci retracement from October 2002 to present. And if you go back and watch that video, you'll see all the different retracements that we've got. And I said just over fears, 23.6 is likely. If we get confirmation or continuing evidence, that's where that 38.2 comes into play. So we need to see what exactly plays out from here. So we got a bounce not only from the 23.6, but even more so from this peak back here. And we're looking at the weekly chart, by the way, the weekly chart that we got back here, November 2021. I'm thinking Bitcoin when I say April. November 21 and for QQQ. Well, before that, we had that sell-off throughout 2022. So we found that peak and we bounced off of it. And I talked about that in the pre-market. Well, look what happens if we go down to the hourly chart for this. And I'll really zoom in and stretch this out. And I can even take out more of this noise if you see. So we actually were down here, the pre-market hours, down around 400. We peaked all the way up over 440 after opening that hour. I should say the low price for that hour. I got to go to the one before that candle before that. We were down at about 402 when the market opened. As a matter of fact, if I go to 30 minutes, we're going to see a little bit nicer. There we go. Got that candle, 402.39. And then the very next half hour, we peaked at 443. So about a 10% jump over that time. And I said, day traders, be ready for this critical support. When you see it reach down here to the bottom of this area, watch for a rebound. That's exactly what we got. And so far, these critical support areas, if I zoom out a little bit more, you'll be able to see that as well, that I have some flags right here saying that these are critical support, that we should absolutely be watching those for an area for a bounce to come in. And that's what we got. So we closed up above those. That's good to see up above support. It is possible that the bounce does continue from where it's at right now. So if I go back out to the weekly chart, once again, reset the view, we'll take down some of the technicals just so we can see more of what's on screen. We are down below the 20-week, the 50-week, the 20-week closing in on the 50-week. I don't know that our sell is necessarily over for right now. That depends on the news that comes out for tariffs, for inflation, geopolitical tensions, labor market conditions, you name it. Those are all things that we have to find out about. And we do get we get inflation reports at the end of this week for CPI, PPI. And I think the biggest one, as I mentioned before, is Michigan consumer sentiment. But for right now, we got that bounce. And it's possible that if we see some good news, we see tariff deals actually coming out across the board, maybe that continues. Any further pressure or bad news geopolitically or for the tariffs, or if we keep on leaning towards the recessionary side of things, today we got a little bit of reprieve. I think we'll take some solace in that. If we go over to the SPY, there we go. For the SPY, once again, January 2022 peak for SPY, tracking the S&P 500. And I said, watch these peaks. We could bounce up off of that. And you can see from this tail that we have on the monthly chart that we're looking at, that that's exactly what happened. If we go down to the daily chart, there we go. You can really see the sort of rebound that we made. We were not able to overtake that previous one. We closed down a little bit. So like I said, I don't know that we're done yet with the bounce, and I also don't know that we're done yet with the fall. I really think that for everyone, it's how this news plays out from here for SPY. The one that I'm excited about, and I'm excited about all the market, but IWM making this beautiful bull channel that we have here, and the fact that we typically live up above the green line. Whatever time we spend down here, I think is going to be brief. That's why I'm dollar cost averaging a position into the Russell 2000 stocks. And I think once we get back up on top of that and we start living up there, we're going to see some of that outperformance that I believe that we're capable of. And I think eventually it's going to take us to new all-time highs. I think it's going to come with high GDP because of quantitative easing and maybe even stimulus from the government. We'll see if we get to that point or not. If the government has to stimulate the economy, IWM is going to benefit from that stimulus, from the easy monetary policy that also goes along with it. That's going to help push up GDP. And so we can enjoy that ride should we get there. So Bitcoin, what's interesting about Bitcoin's chart right now, we have a massively indecisive candle at the moment. If you haven't watched my video on Bitcoin and what these rays have been showing us since 2013 to 2021, up to the last 4 years of history, all these rays have been formed, with the exception of the top one, and we seem to pay attention to them and actually find peaks at them. We get stuck in between them. There's another peak at them, and then we also come down to them. So these rays that you see across your screen, you can even see them more readily if I really zoom out on this thing. They really seem to explain where we find those peaks and those valleys. We punched down below this most recent one, but so far we're closing above it. That's great for support. If we close down below it solidly, that can be something where we continue to sell down. Now, mind you, this candle is a very indecisive one, having an almost non-existent body to it with these high wicks, a high wick and low wick on it. So we'll see what happens next. The next candle usually tells the story. So if we have another candle that can go up above, that's a good thing for bullishness. And if we fall down below the trend line, and if we, especially on big volume, if we sell down here, that can tell you that there's going to be a further sell coming up in our future. For XRP, we had this consolidation pattern. We broke down below it. So far, we have this 200-day coming up here, offering that support with a very long bottom wick on this, showing that there's a lot of buying pressure here. We did get rejected off the trend line up here, so we have to get back into that, back up above that resistance to turn it into support, hopefully to push back up to the upside on this. Hopefully we get a big enough bounce that we start to see some more of that bullishness come back to Bitcoin, to XRP, and of course to the NASDAQ 100, to the S&P 500, to IWM. Be really nice to find a big stride in there. I don't know that this game is played out. I think that we've seen phase one. I think there's a phase two coming. So just long enough until we get some good amount of hope that things are recovering and then smack down again. I think that's probably about what's going to happen. So looking at the Treasury yields, look at this. If we go into the 10-year Treasury yield, look at that big old pickle on there. The amount of recovery that we made. In this morning's video, I talked about the head and shoulders pattern. We broke back up above the neckline and just this massive move, rejecting off the 200 so far. And this is the daily chart that we're looking at for the 10-year Treasury yields. And the 20-year Treasury yield is much more the same as we look at it, although we broke above 200, above the 20. We're getting resistance right at about the 50-day on this one. That head and shoulders pattern that we have, not necessarily refuted, although we did fail the retest to hold on to that to watch this thing fall. So as far as TLT goes for the 20-year Treasury yield, that's why you see this big pepper right here selling down. Now, mind you, we did not, we were up above the 200-day, fell down below, but we did catch our support right at the 50-day so far. We want to sit back up on top of the 20, and we want to put that retest back in. We have this inverse head and shoulders. We were hoping for a candle up here today. Didn't quite get it today. And like I said, I think that so far, what we're seeing in the markets right now is that bounce that I was talking about, where the treasuries were going to have a rough day and the market was going to have a slightly better day. NASDAQ 100 closing up a couple of, not percentage points, but basis points, if you want to talk about it that way. And then the S&P 500 closing down just a couple of basis points. More or less even day, especially compared to what we have been seeing the past couple days in the markets. So I do think this bounce can continue. We'll see if it does. And definitely it is a very news dependent thing on the tariff situation, and then the inflation reports at the end of the week. We also have the Fed minutes on Wednesday. And then also at the end of the week, we have the Michigan consumer sentiment, which I think is going to be a major catalyst as well, because that can do a lot to influence whether or not a recession is something that we find ourselves in. Because if the consumer stops putting out the spending out there and really starts to hoard their cash instead and hold on to their cash, and that's not going through the economy instead because it's money that's not being spent, and that can be a sign that people are starting to tighten up their belts. They're starting to conserve a little bit. Not as high consumerism. That means lower GDP. And then things get a little bit wild from there. So I think we're going to bounce for right now. And I think news dependent from that point in time. I don't know that we make a full recovery from this. I think that we're pretty far off from that, at least until what we find the dust settling from the tariff thing. Right now, we got a small amount of dust settling over the weekend. And so now we have the week to play out Got to listen to what exactly happens as other countries come out and give their counter offers, because I really do think that this is a negotiation, even if there's rumor, speculation, or even statements to say that this is not a negotiation, this is what we're going with. I think this is very much playing hardball right now. So guys, I told you about the Discord. If you want to see my technicals, if you want to hear my commentary, if you want to talk to me, the other panel experts, the link's in the description. Make sure that you go ahead and click on that, sign up for the earner tier. It gets access to absolutely everything that the Discord has to offer. Not only is access to the panel experts and their expert only channels, we have the bread bot over there, we have the AI tools, we have the advanced charting tools. And if you look through just a list of products and services that have to offer with either tier that you choose, but especially the earner tier, I will tell you what, like you just scroll, there's just more and more and more that's there, along with the best community that I've ever had the pleasure to be a part of, guys. We'd love to have you over there. And if you want to learn about technical analysis yourself, learn about trading using technicals, using the bread recipe, make sure you click on the link for Stockmo Academy. Sign up for the course bundle. It's going to save you a ton of cash. Use code word doctor when you do. It's going to save you even more cash when you sign up for those courses. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I am Dr. Stock, Doctor of Education. Remember, my friends, that learning is earning. We'll see you next video.